I'm Samantha Biddy, and for this week's video, I don't think I can really call it a Biddy Bits because I'm not sure that by the end of it, I will have offered any advice. I think this video is more an invitation for us all to consider the ways we are collectively responsible for a culture, the type of norms and thinking that granted and allowed a famous rapper to just candidly disclose that he's been monitoring his daughter's hymen for 18 years. Like many others, when the news broke about T.I., my first thoughts were, what fresh hell is this? What in the misogynistic, toxic, patriarchal hell is this? But then I realized that there's nothing fresh about this. There's nothing new about this idea. It's super easy to point fingers at and be critical of extreme examples. I want to talk about, I'm going to say the 5 ways that we're all responsible for contributing to these narratives. There could be 6, there could be 3. Let's see what happens. Let's start with the most obvious. Virginity narratives, or just virginity as a concept in general. I can't contribute much to what's already been belaboredly discussed on Instagram and Twitter and in academic journals and whatever about virginity as a social construct. Look it up. But what I can say is that even if we aren't acting as if virginity is a real thing, we still hold on to the concept as a culture to talk about things we've never done before. We say things like, oh, like I'm a blank virgin. I'm a tapas virgin. I don't know why tapas was the example I used there. That's kind of stupid. So long as we're casually and colloquially using that word to describe things we've never done, I think it just continues to perpetuate this notion of virginity as a sense of pureness, something that we are like seeking or idealizing. The commodification of sex. The idea that sex, even broadly, is something that we give or receive or deserve. Dehumanizes and disempowers an individual from any kind of sexual autonomy. It assumes that sexual activity or sexuality is always in relation to another. It is not. If I waited around for someone to deserve sex from me, I would be celibate. There's nothing wrong with being celibate. Not respecting the bodily autonomy of children and young people. What that means is assuming possession of or ownership of a child. One of the most important ways we don't respect children's bodily autonomy and young people's autonomy is not informing them of their healthcare rights. A lot of adults aren't even aware of their healthcare rights. And in Ontario, we actually have client healthcare rights. Make sure you're looking out for it and you know what you have the right to privacy about, what you can advocate for, what you can consent to. Listen, I know we have to make decisions for kids and we have to make decisions for children and young people because we're responsible for them. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to have a conversation about it. The whole idea of like no means no or I said so is actually super harmful in the development of empathy in children. Be like, I want you to get dressed because when we're outside, the temperature changes. This is the food that you need so that you have energy to play. It might seem really small, but those little acts of not valuing a child's consent then translates into patterns and cycles that they get into later in life when they're making decisions around whether it's sexual autonomy or they're being mistreated at work or whatever. Studies find that when you explain your reasoning to a child, it cultivates empathy and they're actually more likely to develop critical thinking skills and make better decisions for their own health and their own bodies in the future. Ignoring the intersections of sexual health, sex education, or just attitudes and norms around sex in general. Things like race, culture, religion, education, location, time in history, generation, all of these major systems that inform every other aspect of our lives inform our ideas about sex. I have no idea how this is going to be edited, but To summarize, as long as we treat virginity as if it's a real thing or a real concept, whether we're talking about it in relation to sex or in relation to like other things we participate in life, as long as we ignore the bodily autonomy of children and young people, as long as we are commodifying sex or talking about it in a way that treats it as though it is a resource that we can assign value to, as long as we are ignoring the intersections that inform our norms and our truths within our communities, as long as we're doing those things, we're all responsible for the type of thinking that led to this, what feels like extreme example in our contemporary Western culture of virginity, hymen, whatever politics. I think that's it for this week. I super apologize for what I'm sure is a lot of background noise and perhaps at moments ranting style investigation into this issue. I hope we all have some takeaways and considerations. And insofar as what my final thoughts and feelings are, is what my final thoughts and feelings always are, is that we need comprehensive sex education, not just for young people, but for adults. A lot of us have a lot of unpacking to do and a lot of areas where we can shine a light. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Scorpio season and that you will check me out on Instagram at Samantha_Biddy or on my website, www.samanthabiddy.com. And next week, I will be back with a proper Biddy Bits. I think about breakups, but we'll see. But I want to talk about some of the more nuanced ways that we speak and move and act that contribute to the kind of extreme thinking of going to the gynecologist to check your daughter's hymen. Also, this is America we're talking about. Do you know how expensive that would be? I mean, I know it's TI, but when was his last album even? What are the gynecological bills in a house where you're checking the hymens of all of your daughters? I actually don't know how many daughters he has. But still,